Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great day. Good job to most of you completing that Chapter 2 benchmark. A lot of great scores in there. I'm really proud of you guys for how you did that. If there's anything that you weren't sure about when you're doing it, maybe you're not sure how you got the right answer, or you didn't get the right answer and you want a little bit of help, please reach out and we can correct those mistakes. But right now we're going to move on to the next chapter, which is Chapter 3. And Chapter 3 deals a lot with angles and triangles. So the first thing we talk about is parallel lines and angles that are associated with parallel lines. But before we can get to parallel lines and their angles, we have to go back a little bit to stuff you should have done in 7th grade, which is when you have two lines that intersect like this, and the angles that are created with it. So angles of two intersecting lines. So we have these two lines here that are intersecting. I'll give them a name. I'll say that this is line A and this is line B. So line A and line B intersect, and when two lines intersect, they create four angles, right? So when any two lines intersect at any point, they create four angles always. So it's the way it's going to happen. Now there's a special relationship between these angles. The question here says, if the measure of angle W is 60 degrees, what is the measure of the other angles? So if you think you have an idea of what they are, pause the screen, start writing them down. If you're not sure, just bear with us and we'll go over it together. So if angle W is 60 degrees, so we'll put 60 degrees right here. So if W is 60 degrees, there's a special relationship between W and X, and there's also a special relationship between W and Y and W and Z that can tell us what the other angles are. I'll start off talking about W and Z. W and Z are straight across from each other right here. When you have two angles that are straight across from each other, if you have two intersecting lines, that's called vertical angles. Okay, so angle W and angle Z are vertical angles. All right. Now vertical angles, their relationship is they have the same angle measure. So if we know that angle W is 60 degrees, well then we also know that angle Z is 60 degrees. Alright, so vertical angles are always the same. So that means that W and Z are vertical angles, and then X and Y are also vertical angles. So once we find the measure of one of them, we'll have the measure of the other because vertical angles are congruent. They have the same measure. So I can find angle X or angle Y by using the relationship between these two angles. Notice that W and X form a straight line. So they're two angles that form a straight line. Does anyone know what the angle measure of a straight line is? Well, hopefully you said it was 180 degrees. That would be correct. So 180 degrees, W plus X equals 180 degrees. I know that. So I know that W plus X equals 180. I also could have done W plus Y equals 180 because they also form a straight line, but I've already done W plus X. So I know that W is 60, so I know that 60 plus X equals 180. So if I subtract 60 from both sides, I'll know that X equals 120. So X is 120. And since X and Y are vertical angles, that means that Y is 120. So those are the angle measures. X is 120 degrees, Y is 120 degrees, Z is 60, and W is 60 degrees. So that's just a little bit of background knowledge that you're going to need for the things that we're about to do. So now, talking about parallel lines, we have these two parallel lines. K and L are parallel. The reason they're parallel is because they will go on and on forever and they will never intersect. That means they'll never touch. So as far as you can go in this direction, as far as you can go down, the two lines will never ever intersect. So these lines are parallel. Now, so we have K and L are parallel. So identify the parallel lines. Well, line K is parallel to line L. So those are parallel lines. Now it says identify the transversal. So a transversal is a line that intersects two parallel lines. So what line intersects these two parallel lines? Well, that would be line M. Question 3 here says, how many lines are formed by the transversal? So before, when we had two lines intersecting, we had 4 angles created. When we have parallel lines being intersected by a transversal, we have 8 angles being created. So that's how many angles we have formed by the transversal. Now, these angles, there's a relationship. So when we had 2 lines before, this last one here, when we had these 2 lines intersecting, we had 4 angles, and there was only 2 angle measures, right? So there's 120 and there was 60. So even though there's 4 angles, you're only going to have 2 angle measures. That's how that always works. For here, you have 2 lines cut by a transversal. You have 8 angles, but you still only have 2 angle measures. So even though you have 8 different angles, there's only 2 angle measures. So let's say that one was 30. Right? Let's say that just one was 30 degrees. Well, that would mean that 2 would be 150 because those 2 lines are what's called supplementary, meaning they add up to 180 degrees, as we had here. So these 2 lines here, they form a line, meaning they're supplementary. They add up to 180 degrees. So that's the same thing happening here. These 2 lines, angles are supplementary. So this is 30, this is 50. There are 3 other angles that are 30 degrees. 6 is 30 degrees, I know that because they're vertical angles. Then 3 is 30 degrees. I know that for another reason that we're going to learn another time, but I also know that 3 is 30 degrees just because it's also an acute angle. Remember acute angles from last year as well. They're angles that are less than 90. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 acute angles. All the acute angles are 30 degrees. All the obtuse angles, right, the angles that are bigger than 90 are called obtuse. All the obtuse angles would be 150 degrees. So there's 8 angles created, but there's only 2 angle measures. It's either the acute angle or the obtuse angle. Those are your 2 options. But the relationship between these angles is something we're going to focus on as we go forward in this section. So one of the angle relationships is called corresponding angles. So when a transversal intersects parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. So corresponding angle, what it means that it's in the same position out of the 4 angles. So we have these 2 parallel lines, P and Q. They're cut by a transversal T. So on the top here, when this line is when these 2 lines are intersected, this line by the transversal, we have 4 angles, right? We have a top right angle, a top left, a bottom left, and a bottom right. And here we also have a top right, a top left, a bottom left, and a bottom right. The corresponding angles, what that means is that we have the bottom right angle corresponds with the bottom right angle here. The top right corresponds with the top right. The top left with the top left. The bottom left with the bottom left. So those will have the same exact measure. Now, this angle and this angle will also have the same measure, so you're only going to have 2 angle measures as we said before, but it's a way of helping us find missing angle measures. So when they're in the same position out of the 4, they're called corresponding angles. That's the relationship. So here it says use the figure to find the measures of angle A, of angle 1 and angle 2. So they give us that this angle is 110 degrees. Okay, so this, out of these 4 angles that are created here, let me do that a little bit better here so you can see, but out of these 4 angles that are created when these 2 lines intersect, 110, what position is that in? Is it in the top left, the top right, the bottom left, or the bottom right? Well, I would say it's in the bottom left, right? Top left, top right, bottom left. So I would say it's in the bottom left position. So which one of these 2 is in the bottom left position? Is number 1 or number 2 in the bottom left? Well, number 1 is, right? So the measure of angle 1, and measure, you'll see this little m in front of it a lot. So it'll be the measure of angle 1 is going to equal, well, the same thing as this, because these 2 lines are corresponding. These 2 angles, rather, are corresponding. So angle 1 corresponds to this angle, so that's why angle 1 is 110 degrees. Now, the measure of angle 2, well, angle 2 and angle 1 are supplementary. That means that they add up to 180. So if you're not sure about that word, we have supplementary. So supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So angle 1 and angle 2 add up to 180. So we have angle 1 plus angle 2 add up to 180. I already know that angle 1 is 110 degrees. So that means that angle 2 is going to be 180 minus 110. So the measure of angle 2, I like to put this angle sign there, is 70. All right, so that is how we can find missing angles using corresponding angles. So if you guys would like to try this one out here, pause the screen please, and when you're ready, press play and we'll watch it play out. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten the answer now. So we'll go over how to find it. So if we look at the given angle is 63 degrees. Now if I was going to talk about positions here, I'd probably say we have the top, the left, the right, and the bottom. So out of this one, and this one, would you say that 63 degrees is the top, the bottom, the left, or the right? I'd say it's the right. So is 1 or 2 the right? Well, 1 is. So that means the measure of angle 1 is 63 degrees because those two angles are corresponding. They're corresponding angles, they're in the same position. Angle 2 is supplementary, meaning they adds up to 180 with 1, right? So angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. So if 1 is 63 degrees, well, then I have to do 180 minus 63 to find out what angle 2 is. And so that would be 117 degrees. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a couple examples on big ideas just with corresponding angles, and then tomorrow we're going to talk about different types of angles with parallel lines. So it shouldn't be too bad. Sorry this video took a little bit longer than usual, but you know, some good stuff, and if you need to rewatch anything, please do so. Alright, if you have any questions, please come to the Open Meet or write it on the Google Doc for questions. Have a great day, guys.